This video is a demonstration of applying basic shading of shadows, light grays, and highlights to a human face, a portrait. And I'm going to try to explain how we can take our understanding of basic shapes, organic shapes, and basic shading skills to emulate, mimic, or render parts of the face, the eyes, the nose, the mouth, and describe how lighting affects turning the light from lights to shadows. I'm going to be using a reference that I have on screen of a person, and the, those of you in class have gotten this image, and I wanted to kind of go back a little bit and explain the breakdown for you. And you can go back and make changes to your original image. A lot of you have a really solid understanding of the shading and the shapes and the proportions. This video is not so much about proportion, but more about basic shapes and forms to how do you say, render, draw, and applying your understanding of shading to, it can be an intimidating shape and form to work with. Okay, so don't be afraid of making mistakes, and but that's the purpose of this video for you. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, in the previous videos, the other videos that we talked about, we discussed basic geometric shapes, squares, flat surfaces. And then there was another video that covered three-dimensional organic shapes. And by watching those videos first, it'll help you understand how to apply that concept, those skills towards a more complex subject matter as a human face. Okay, so now I'm gonna start off with this sketchbook here. I'm gonna start off on the divide it up into one, two, three, four areas, and I'm gonna be working in the top area here to draw the eye, and I'm gonna put a line down the middle, and this zone up here, this is where I'm gonna start the eye. And when I'm drawing the eye area, the eyebrows, the eyelashes, all that stuff. I don't care about the tiny details. I want to work with big shapes. So I'm looking at this brow area, this eye socket, this eye, and it's very contrasty. There's strong contrast of lights and darks. It's very clear. It's very dark and heavy. So I'm looking at this as shapes and forms. So this is a semicircle here, semicircle. I see the darkness of the brow. And within this semicircle, this is the eyelid closed. I see the eyeball underneath. And then from the previous video, I talked about circles within circles. And I see there's a highlight, there's a light area here. And this is the shadow. The light source is coming from the top right, coming down across this shape and form. And this is the basic shape that I see. So I'm outlining the shapes, the zones, areas that I want dark and light. This area will be very dark. This will be dark. And then we have some grays within this shape. Okay. So next step is to block in, shade in, and I'm not going straight to black or really dark. I'm just going in with a medium gray. And fill in that whole shape. And typically, I suggest that for you is don't worry about the tiny details, or you start off with large shapes first, big areas, and then you move towards smaller details, more definition, more separation between light and dark. And it doesn't look like an eye yet, but it doesn't matter. I'm really worried about the shape, the outside definition, the contour. And I think I did a pretty good job with that. And this is a time early on to kind of adjust some things. So there's our eyeball with the person's eyes are closed. This is their eyelash. underneath their eye. There's our highlight up here, the shape of the highlight. So now I'm going to go in and add in more shading to the darker areas. And as I approach this orb, this kind of rounded spherical ball-like shape, I'm going to be careful because that's the area I want to create the shading, the transitions of light and dark, because that's where the contrast, it goes from dark shadow around this area to the highlight up here. So this is kind of flat up here. I'm making it darker. I'm using all those techniques we discussed earlier. And of course, if you like slow down, you can slow down your drawing and you don't have to work as fast as I'm doing right now. But so I'm blocking in this dark shadow up here. And then underneath where the eyelashes are, look at that. And this is another dark flat area. So blocking in, it just relieves so much pressure on you to get all the details. And our goal here is not to get super detail and everything perfect. The goal here is to demonstrate how to, for you to apply your skills and knowledge of basic shapes towards uh, the human face. So I have dark, dark area. And in here, this is where we're going to spend most of our time here. This is where we're going to put in on the edge of that lip of that eyelash, there's a little bit of a light area. This area right here, I'm going to leave that alone. That's light. And then on this corner, moving towards the highlight, put a little arrow here for you. It goes from dark to light. So I'm going to go more pressure, and as it moves up towards that highlight, I'm going to get lighter and lighter. And try your best. And if whatever your first drawing, it might not be like the most incredible drawing, and that's okay. The key here is start practicing and applying this technique to see where you can improve and see your success, your small steps of success moving towards. So that's my highlight area. I'm moving the shadow around there to be darker, but as it moves into that highlight area, I'm going to use less pressure and less pencil and less material. See that sphere, that ball underneath start to emerge? I'm dancing around this highlight here. Ooh, I like this little contoured edge. Man, that just shows the eyelid. That's where the eyelid is here. And this is a good discussion for you guys. When you're trying to draw complex things, break it down into simpler shapes. It makes it yeah, it's more doable. It's more understandable, and if you do find it, like overwhelming, I think about what the goal here is. The goal here is to apply light and dark, all the things you learned in drawing one, towards the human figure, organic shapes. Some people, you can actually flip your source image, your reference image, upside down and draw your drawing upside down. And strangely enough, that actually can make your drawing more accurate. Why is that? Maybe you're seeing the shape for what it is rather than what you think it is. Okay, so now I'm going to go back in and do some more work here. I'm going to add a little bit more transition, some grays, light grays, going towards this zone of highlights, the lightest area right here. So it's slowly going from gray, light gray, to dark around as it moves into the corner here. You see this area right here? I'm going to go back in and make that darker. And you can use those little circle techniques we discussed earlier to make it darker. But in this area right here, I'm going to make it darker. Wow, that is so cool. Look at that. When I make this area darker, it makes it more three-dimensional. Like it's the corner of the eyes, typically it's further away from the viewer, so it's depending on your light source, it looks darker, more recessed, away from the viewer. So it makes it more powerful, more dramatic contrast and movement of light. And right there at the corner of the eye, there's this little detail of a little triangle. Okay. There's that darkness. And on the other side, over here, on the other side of the eye, there's another dark area. I'm going to put in that, from that corner of that eye, it's define where the eye socket goes into, block in that area darker. And those of you who have the handout from the exercise, you can see, you can follow along. And I demonstrated with the other technique, but here with pencil. So to make this lighter, the illusion of making the lighter areas brighter and lighter, you make the shadows darker. And this image has a lot of dark recessed, very powerful darks in this image. To make this area lighter, you make the surrounding background, surrounding shapes and forms darker. So around this eye, look at that. This is an example of a high contrast image. Some images are more tonal, more gray, more soft, but this one was a good example for you to test out. Just see where you are with your understanding of shading on the human face here. So I'm going to go in and make this eyelash darker. Underneath the eyelash is darker. All right, look at that. That's our starting point. That's the eye here, blocking in the eye. Going back up here, I can work on the shadows a little bit more. Okay, so here, it's almost like this triangle, this curved triangle right here, wrapping around the bottom, this light, this shadow right there. Look at that. We're not going to do too much more details on this one. I think that's a good starting point for the eye. Oh, on the top left-hand side, you notice the temple, the side of the skull. As it moves up, you notice this band. I'm just going to create this shadow go right up, because that shows that that side of the head is away from the light source. I'm just going to do one flat shape. I hope you find this video helpful. You can speed it up. You don't have to spend time with it if you're already familiar with this technique. But for those of you who need this, I think the goal is to help you out and give you information that you can apply for your character and your drawings. Okay, so that flow of light and dark, there's the eye. And then now let's move on to the nose. And the nose is, well, there's a bridge right here. And I'm just going to follow along the contour here. The bridge of the nose. Try my best. And what I'm trying to draw is draw the highlights. This is the area for the highlights, the white of the light part of the bridge of the nose. And as it comes down, you have a circle. Put a little circle right there, tip of the nose. And then if all along, I'm trying to draw the nostril. Here's the nostril. Just that basic shape. And there's the philtrum. You know, that little cleft area, that little dip underneath the nose. I don't want to make it too complex, but there's just this organic shape of the nose. Okay. And just kind of double checking the contours. And then there's a little bit of a bump on the nose, just a little bit. Bring that in there. All right, there you go. Trying to see the shape of the negative shape of the. There's that shape. And here we talked about spheres and balls. Here's a little tiny ball right here. And where's the highlight? Where's right there on the nose? You can see it's like the lightest area. We're going to leave that alone. This whole area here is dark. Okay, let's see here. I want to just double check the distance. This nose could be a little bit shorter, I think. Just a little bit shorter, a little bit higher up. Okay, now let's go in and do some shading on here. So first off, you notice in the reference image that this whole side is dark. So I'm going to just block in a dark gray. So to define this nose, I'm going to block in the negative space. And there are some subtle, it's very dark. I don't see a whole lot of the eyeball of the other side. It's just, I'm just going to block it in because our focus is on the nose. So let's take our time and block in just a flat, dark gray. And I'm covering up the white of the paper so it looks like shadow. Yeah, I'm not concerned that it's too detailed. It's not about detail, it's just blocking in this dark area. That's the shadow. I'm seeing that as a big shape. And I'm just blocking and roughing in the shape of that negative space, the shadows of this figure. And my goal here is to just add more crispness, a little bit more sharper edge. Uh, look, you're starting to see a nose appear. Nose. The nose, the eyes, the mouth can be challenging and difficult because there's just so many muscles and parts, and for the human to express themselves, different emotions, different expressions. It's beautiful. It's just it's tough to kind of draw. And later on, when you study the skull and tendons, muscles, and fats, it'll help you see what's underneath the surface of the skin and see what's underlying the mechanical parts, and you'll see how it affects the surface, and that'll give you more confidence in drawing the human face. Right now, our goal is to just give it a try and applying shadow and shading. I'm gonna keep it making it darker, double checking my reference image. I don't know, it's kind of reminding me of Bride of Frankenstein. Oh my gosh, what's you can use that circle technique if you wanted to, and be patient. Take a break if it's too tedious. Okay, now I can go back later in and make this darker if I want. And by putting in this block of value, you notice it helps to define the nose, the contour of the nose. And here I'm going to go back in. Now we're going to use our technique, our understanding of shadows. Here, the nostril, I'm going to break it down into 3 values here. There's shadow, middle gray, and highlight. There's a highlight right here. It's not as bright as this one. It's a little bit lower. Let's bring that down just a little bit. So I'm going to block in my values here. This is part of the nose is blocking this corner of the nostril. It's shadow because it's coming from above the light source. Let's raise this up a little bit. So here I'm going to block in the shadow. Just take your time and slowly. I had a teacher once who explained it's almost like pouring water onto your drawing when you're drawing. So imagine you're pouring in shadow and it's flowing down the side of the shape and form, the nose. So this shadow is flowing down, just filling in the crevices, the deeper recesses. It's like water. It's very organic and flowing and smooth, and it's going into those shapes. I thought that was a beautiful metaphor for, and the shadows curving around the tip of the nose. There's a shadow area. And it flows down the philtrum. See that little, looks like a tooth, the roots of the teeth, and it connects with the mouth. And right here, the separation between the nostril and the tip of the nose, look at that, it curves right here. There's a shadow that comes forward. It's kind of counterintuitive. You have this kind of elliptical shape right here. And that wraps around, moving towards the tip of the nose, which is the bright area. So I'm blocking in this shadow area. And the more you add layers, it gets darker and darker. So I'm shaping the nose with the shadows. So this is underneath the tip of the nose. And by having in this dark area, it's making sure that the tip of the nose looks lighter. And we'll blend, slowly blend towards the highlight. Identify with your eyes, where's the highlight in this piece? Here, back up in the top of the nostril, there's a subtle triangle right here. Very light tone on the side of the nose. And I'm going to block in a light gray. And the purpose of this is with this light gray, it helps to define the highlight. Just very light, very light. And when it connects to the eye, there's like a little bit of gray moving outward, connecting. And see this little bridge right here, where the brow meets the nose bridge? There's this section, like a trapezoid shape right here. The brow, there's this subtle gray. Let's put in that gray. Connect to the other side of the face. It's a saddle. It's just wrapped around. Okay, all right, so all right, so we have the bridge of the nose coming down, and let's see here. Okay. An eraser here. Let's go ahead and go back in and pull out the highlights. Look at where the brightest areas are as it flows down. The nose, we're going to blend in a little bit darker. Okay, let's go back here, double check. There's the flow of the highlight. The bridge of the nose comes down in here. Let's go ahead and draw subtle grays around that circle. Do you see why we did the previous exercise on values of light and dark and squares, and then we went towards organic shapes, and this is where we're applying the organic shapes to the nose. And the more time you spend with this, you just notice these subtle transitions of light and dark. And this will come more naturally to you when you keep practicing shading. If you haven't done a whole lot of shading work before, you've done a lot of line work, this practice is definitely going to help you out. So this area in your reference image, there's the other cheek. Notice it gets darker around it. So if I make this area darker, it creates the illusion presence of it, even though in shadow there's another other side of the face on that side. So we started off with simple shapes and form, but slowly we're mapping out and describing the lights and darks as it flows over this face. And let's see here. Trying to find the angle of the chin, the mouth. And with the mouth, there's the philtrum, and then we have these little triangle peaks for the top of the lips. Looking at the shape of just the upper lip, so that's the upper lip. Let's bring that up just a little bit. There's an angle of that upper lip is slightly tilted. You see that? So I'm just the outside shape. Let's bring that in just a little bit more. And then what's the shape of that lower lip? It's like a semicircle upside down. So I broke that down into lower lip. And then I want to go further and I want to just describe the shape of the shadow underneath the lip. This is underneath that lower lip. This is defining the chin. I'm looking at the light areas. So those are the basic shapes. Maybe bring these up a little bit more. Okay, so now as you saw previously, I went in and did the shading around the, I'm gonna let that flow down and just block in that gray area. Helps to unify, connect your those shapes and forms. So I'm gonna take some time to just flow down the side. Yeah, this is the shadow. And as I darken this in, it recedes, it goes back into space. Do you see how blocking in this shadow area, this darker, flatter, dark area, it helps to contour and define. We haven't even really done a whole lot of work in the lips or the cheek or the chin. So now, just by blocking that in, you're telling the viewer this is the area where the light is, this is the subject matter. It's emerging from the paper. And I don't want to leave it just like too much texture. I want to flatten it out so it's not distracting. This is not the area I want people to spend focus on in the subject matter. I want it to be the more interesting parts of the portrait, the facial features. So by flattening this out, it's there, but it's not the most important thing. It allows the subject to stand out. The balance of lights and darks, contrasts. Those of you who are into drawing, photography, video, they overlap. It's you can adjust the balance of lights and darks to create different moods, emotions. All right, so now we're going to go back in and I'm going to show you how to bring out the shadows of the three-dimensional qualities of the lips, and I'm going to flow down the side of the face here. Now let's go in, and this, the shadow shape that I see underneath the lip is like this, how would you describe this? Like a polygon or a bow tie? See this bow tie shadow underneath that lower lip, and I'm just going to go ahead and put in just a medium value gray. By defining the shadow underneath that lower lip, you allow that lip to protrude and come forward. So what I'm doing, the work around that lip, look at that. That lower lip stands out more. And even within the shadow, the more you stare at this, there's like a thing called core, the core of the shadow, this towards the very deepest part, it's a little bit darker. So I'm going to go back in and make that a little bit darker underneath here. You got to give yourself trust and patience, because at first it just doesn't look recognizable. You have to spend time to create the illusion of the shapes coming forward or moving backward. And I'm trying to demonstrate with simple shapes and forms, and it's going to take some practice on your part. Okay, so look at that. I define the shadow underneath that lower lip. Now I'm going to go to that upper lip, and the upper lip is fairly flat. So what I'm going to do is just block that in with a dark gray. Yeah, you're drawing the proportions. They don't have to be perfect, but I would like you to start applying this understanding of shading and practice applying it to portraits. And you won't get better at this unless you make mistakes and try. And you're not a perfect drawer. You're making your way, you're getting better, and you're putting time and energy into this, but you need to go through the awkwardness of not perfect drawings. You have to show that you care about it and you put time and effort into it, and you'll learn from your not so great drawings. They're great teachers for you. Keep them, study them, appreciate them for what they're showing you. So that flow of dark water, dark shadow in the upper lip is just flowed into this. And now notice how the lip emerges underneath. It's clear, the contrast. It's going to wrap around the lip here. And then we'll go back down here and work on the chin. In the chin, there's a middle gray here, and the highlight is right there. Highlight's right there. This one's a little bit more pronounced, secondary highlight. So what I'm going to do is put in some light gray and leave those highlights alone. And then go back in and draw the shadow underneath the chin, a little bit darker. Just slowly build up the surface. There's the highlight. Moving towards the highlight, that's the highlight, and around it, it's just gray. It's not black or dark gray, it's just gray. This is a little bit lighter than this area. So it's there, but it's not as pronounced anymore. It's not as powerful. Okay. So what I like to do is on the side of the right cheek, okay, what I'm going to do is draw, there's the boundary of shadow. There's like a little bit gray area right here. This zone right here is gray. This will be white, but this is gray right here. And I'll go ahead and put in a gray for you just to see what it looks like. So it flows down this gray. Connects with, there's the cheekbone. You know, it's not so much that the anatomy of the cheekbones, but there's that shape. There's that organic shape we were talking about. It's not straight lines, it's organic. Okay, so now that we have this zone right here of gray, okay, on this side, we're gonna just flow in those dark shadows, and it's, I don't care about like super, there's no real detail in that zone, that area, so I'm just gonna take my time to help unify the shadows, connect it to the other side of the face. And this is a 4B pencil, so it's just easier to build up the dark shadows. It's easier to create. Some of you are drawing, you know, larger on 8 by 10, 9 by 12 paper. Some of your drawing heads and drawings are very small, like 3 inches by 5 inches. That's not enough. You need to draw bigger. By drawing bigger, you have more space to work with, and you're allowing the shape and the form to project. When you're drawing that small for this type of project, you're creating very precious, tiny little doll-like shapes and forms. And you need to draw bigger for certain exercises. So here you're starting to see how the the shadows are connecting now. Okay, and then you have time to go back in and do more detail, more transitions. I'm going to do the gray here. Needs to add some more material, more I'm sorry, shadow into this area. Okay, so these highlights represent the highest points on the face. The cheekbones are higher, nostrils are higher, the tip of the nose are closer to the viewer, the forehead. We haven't done a whole lot of work. We can do some more work on the forehead. Here, the cheekbones. Now, I want to go in and just maybe make this just a little bit darker And by making this darker, it's making the grays more identifiable. Those transition areas from shadow to highlights. Okay, here, go back in and do some light grays that I see. There's some light grays here. And I'm moving my pencil to define the light grays. This is all dark up here. Let's block that in. Grays, grays, grays. And then here, from the nose, there's a subtle shadow right here, showing the muscles underneath protruding slightly. Okay. And then on this lip here, the shadow, some muscles around the mouth, this flat, dark area. I want to round off that triangle a little bit more. I don't want it to be so dramatic. Go back into the upper lip. This will be the core of the shadow here. Like where the lower lip and the bottom lip meet, I'm going to make that darker. I'm going to put in a light gray on this, the lower lip. And I really don't want to work with texture of the lower lip right now. And on the lower lip, there's a little highlight. The edge of that lip right there is lighter. And there's a highlight right there. Highlight right there. Edge of that corner of that lower lip, and right there. So shadow, adding a little bit more complexity, a little bit more transition between shadow and highlight underneath that core of shadow. We're getting towards the end of this exercise here, but I hope you found this helpful. How to block in shapes and forms, and the face is built up of organic shapes and forms. Now I'm just going around and clarifying the edge, just making it sharper. Okay, wow. That's a lot of work, but as we work on this, sometimes you want to draw maybe just the eye by itself and work on the nose and then work on the mouth separately. And that's the end of this video. And see, just eyelashes. Shadows. Okay, we'll just end it at that.